Estelle reached up and put her own small hand onto his. Her eyes closed behind her almost comically thick glasses, and a small tear tracked down her cheek. Estelle had been picked up in South Georgia. Eric was picked up in Oregon. The only reason they had been taken, as some bug-faced looking troll explained to them, his chirping and clicking sounds changed by a device on his belt into English, was because that some great event, which he called the Galactic Games, had arrived. It seems that once every 25 galactic cycles, a contest of great import took place, where 50 species all fought to the death in the great arena. The betting and money that changed hands during this event had fortunes won and lost, planets changed possession, and in some unfortunate cases, entire races subjugated to indentured servitude, all due to an ill-informed wager. This year, there was only 49 species, as one that normally attended the games were wiped out by their sun going nova. They needed another species, and so they searched and found the humans. Rather than asking for a tribute of 2 members, the game committee felt it prudent to just take 2 at random, so that is what they did. The bug troll went on to explain that 2 members from each species volunteered after spending their lives training for this event. The winner would receive 25x the weight of their heaviest opponent in whatever precious metal they desired. And the prestige. You can choose any luxury, bed any other's partner, demand any exorbitant price to make an appearance, and it will be granted. The bug troll hesitated, seemingly sure that the newcomers called humans would be impressed. He was only slightly disappointed to see they were not. I did not volunteer for anything, Eric growled through clenched teeth. He looked back at his companion, the elderly black woman called Estelle, and I am pretty sure she did not either. The bug troll remained quiet for a moment, as if trying to think of a proper response. What he finally said was, "I don't care." As he turned to leave, he said, "Whether you fight or not makes no difference. Once in that arena, whoever you are facing will kill you. I hope to make a large sum from your deaths if you are the first race to perish." And so, that is how Eric and Estelle, the first humans ever in the Galactic Games, came to be. Eric shuddered at some of the other species he saw. Small, fast beings with razor-sharp claws, hulking beasts whose hands were the size of his head, thin creatures that seemed to flicker in and out of his vision. And worst of all, something that Eric could only describe as a mantis spider. Long, scything talons, mandibles that dripped some greenish-colored liquid, and a huge, towering arachnid body. It gave him the shivers to even think about it. Eric looked helplessly at the hulking beast. "And there are 2 of them?" he asked. The guard barked out a laugh. "Yes, but Tiamat will kill his partner the moment the games begin. Most of the champions do. It is tradition. No need to share the spoils." The guard turned an eye stalk to where Estelle was in the back of their holding area, on her knees, rocking back and forth and praying for salvation. "I think it would be easy for you to do the same," he said. Eric recoiled in disgust. The calm nonchalance in which the alien suggested he kill a helpless woman just solidified what he was dealing with, and it made the thought of killing them a little easier to bear. So when it was about to begin, Eric placed his hand on Estelle's shoulder. "Don't worry about this, Estelle," he said gently. "I got this. When it begins, I will pretend to kill you, and you just lie down. I think that will be enough to keep you safe, at least for a little while." Estelle could only nod her head in silence, her hand resting on Eric's, with tears of frustration squeezing out from tightly clenched eyes. The arena they stood in was packed floor to ceiling with spectators. Announcers spoke the names of the competitors, and their odds of winning, translated into every language. The crowd was already cheering, without the games having even begun. In the arena itself, 100 warriors stood facing each other, spread out evenly. A countdown began, blaring over the loudspeakers, but the roar from the crowd almost drowned it out. Then a loud wailing siren sounded. The games had begun. Immediately, Eric turned to Estelle and put his hands around her throat. He looked like he was choking the life out of her, but he was really just gently lowering her to the ground. Estelle gave a subdued sob, a slight nod of her head, and lay still. Eric stood and looked around. It seemed that most of his competitors also had just attacked their partners the second the games began. The ground of the arena was already littered with the dead. Eric saw Tiamat slicing up his partner easily, body parts and blood flying with every swipe of Tiamat's mighty claws. Shaking his head in disgust, Eric advanced toward his nearest enemy, a bipedal feline-looking creature. The fight was quick. The cat creature darted in, hissing at Eric, but a quick right cross brought the thing to the ground, and then a quick stomp from a work boot ended it. The crowd was always roaring at some action that was going on, mostly around Tiamat's victories. Eric made sure to steer clear of any area Tiamat was in. As the number of fighters dwindled, Eric realized that most of his competitors were very badly winded, some struggling to stay upright as the battle raged. Eric was tired, yes, but he had plenty more reserves to draw from. It was this that kept him alive. He kept moving, darting in and hitting opponents, then darting out until the opponent dropped, or they got frustrated enough to move on to a newer, slower opponent. Eric saw himself facing off against an alien that looked like a small tree, with dark bark for skin and long, twig-like fingers. Eric soon found out that even though the twigs looked fragile, they were razor-sharp and deadly. Eric struggled against this tree creature but was unable to get in close. Every time he tried, a quick slash ended his attempt and opened more wounds on Eric. His arms, chest, and back were soon covered in bleeding gashes. Looking around, Eric saw that there were only 3 fighters left. The tree creature, himself, and Tiamat, who was standing back, watching them fight to the death. No need to attack now. Let them fight and hurt each other more. Eric became desperate. He was unable to penetrate the defenses of the tree creature, and he was losing a lot of blood. He had no choice. He feigned weariness, stumbling and making slow lunges. He was attempting to lure the creature into thinking he was worse off than he really was. It seemed to work. The creature became more excited, taking more risks to end the fight, as Tiamat slowly circled them both, waiting to rush in and attack the victor. Eric stumbled and fell to a knee. The creature rushed in to finish him, but instead of finding an exhausted human on his last legs, the tree creature suddenly saw Eric lunge forward, his left arm grabbing it by the throat. The creature thrashed, slashing at the arm that had it in an iron grip. Tiamat started to approach, getting ready to pounce. Looking directly into Tiamat's eyes, Eric roared, his deep, bellowing voice even drowning out the roar of the crowd, and Eric lifted the tree creature by his throat off the ground, one-handed, while the creature continued to slash his arm to bloody ribbons. Tiamat hesitated and saw, with a final roar, Eric shake the creature by the neck. Tiamat heard a loud snap as the neck broke, and Tiamat watched as Eric threw the corpse to the dirt, his eyes never leaving Tiamat's. For the first time in his long life, Tiamat found himself a little intimidated. Eric stood facing Tiamat, his left arm ripped to shreds by the tree creature. His red blood ran down his arm, to his fingers, and down into the gray dirt of the arena. Tiamat extended his front foreclaws, long, scything and razor-sharp. Tiamat was limping a little, as an opponent had managed to damage his back left leg. Eric looked hopelessly around. There was nothing he could use as a weapon, nothing but his own hands. Tiamat rushed at Eric, swinging with his mighty claws, but Eric was able to dive out of the way. Tiamat struggled to turn and face him. His back leg was hurt more than Eric first thought. It gave him a little hope. If he could stay out of the way of the talons, he may be able to wear Tiamat out. So Eric started a long cat-and-mouse game, the audience roaring each time a claw almost cut him in half. There were many times a piece of paper could not have fit between the talons of Tiamat and Eric's skin. Soon, Tiamat started to tire. His slashes slowed down, and instead of wide, sweeping swipes at Eric, to save energy, Tiamat started to slash straight downwards, the tip of his claw digging into the dirt of the arena floor. Eric saw his chance. The next time Tiamat sliced downwards, the tip of his claw embedding itself deep in the hard-packed dirt of the arena, Eric threw his entire body weight in a lunge at the claw, hitting it with his shoulder. A loud crack echoed through the arena, and Tiamat roared in pain, flailing backwards, his right arm spurting green blood where the claw had broken off at the wrist. Eric quickly grabbed Tiamac's broken claw and, straining, managed to pull it out of the dirt. The crowd was on their feet, stamping and screaming as Eric stood facing Tiamac, using Tiamac's own claw as a weapon against him. Tiamac hissed in rage and pain and lunged at Eric. Eric roared at Tiamac and ran to meet him, the two gladiators slamming into each other, slashing and tearing, trying to end each other's existence and finish this. Eric screamed in pain when Tiamac managed to slice through his abdomen and down into his thigh. Eric knew that Tiamac had overextended himself to do this, so Eric swung with all his strength at Tiamac's chest, where the claw Eric was using as a weapon ripped through the protective plating and stuck in Tiamac's spine. Tiamac roared in pain, grabbed the claw stuck in his chest, yanked it out, and immediately fell to the dirt, twitching and spasming as the claw severed his spine when Tiamac had ripped it out. Eric fell to his knees, then to his back. His lifeblood pooled around him, and his vision began to fade. He knew he was dying, but he also knew that Tiamac would follow quickly behind. The thought of that made Eric smile, and that is how this noble human passed, victorious in battle against a larger, stronger foe, with a ghost of a smile on his lips. As Eric expired, Tiamac knew he was the winner. He tried to struggle to move, but he was helpless. He knew, however, that he would be allowed medical attention now that the tournament was over, but it would have to come quick if he was to survive this. That human was a lot stronger and tougher than he ever dreamed. Tiamac's eyes darted in all directions, straining to see the medical personnel that should be running to his aid. He saw nothing. The crowd was silent, questioning why the winner had not been announced. Eric the human was dead. Tiamac was still alive, if barely, so Tiamac was the victor. Where was the blaring siren, denoting the end of the games and Tiamac victorious? A gasp ran through the crowd as all eyes turned to where Estelle lay in the dirt. They saw her slowly sit up and struggle to her feet. They watched as she looked around the blood-stained arena, festooned with body parts and corpses. They watched as she slowly shuffled forward in her fluffy slippers, each step creating a small cloud of dust. They watched in silence as she knelt by Eric, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Rest well, my warrior," she said softly and closed his unseeing eyes with her trembling hand. She struggled back to her feet and looked with pure hatred at Tiamac. Tiamac tried to move, to slash out at the frail human approaching him, but Eric's strike had been too deep. His limbs would not respond. Tiamac tried to say something, but only managed to cough up a green blob of bloody mucus to the dirt he lay in. He watched in terror as Estelle stooped and picked up his broken claw. Tiamac tried to flail around, to scream, to do anything, but his body would not respond. He just saw Estelle slowly walk up to him and place the sharp point of his own broken claw to his eye. "For Eric," Estelle managed to say, and put all her sickly, frail weight on the claw. It was enough. The razor-sharp talons slid through Tiamac's eye, releasing a greenish, stringy liquid, and pierced through into his brain. The crowd was as silent as the grave. Suddenly, a loud siren blared, causing the entire arena to jump in their seats. And then the crowd erupted in a roar of pure emotion. Some wailed at lost fortunes, others screamed for the unlikely human, and others yelled just to release pent-up emotions. "The victor of the games!" the announcer roared, and beams of light from a dozen different sources shone down on Estelle's bent and shaking form. Estelle only shuffled slowly back to the large gate at the exit to the arena. The crowd roared with excitement with every step she took, each puff of blood-stained dirt her slippers raised. And then, just before she disappeared from view, she turned back to the crowd. A silence so complete you could hear the faintest of noises fell across the crowd. Every ear was bent. All attention was focused on this human warrior who stunned the galaxy, waiting to see what she would do or say. Estelle slowly looked across the vast arena, taking in all the alien forms and creatures that covered every square inch of her vision. She slowly raised both arms above her head, her small hands clenched into fists. And then she quickly extended the middle finger of each hand, turned on her heel, and left. Roaring, thinking it was a human sign of victory, the crowd repeated the gesture. Every arm of every alien raised to the heavens, every middle digit extended. It soon swept the galaxy. Anytime a contest was won, anytime an opponent was bested, the victor would throw both arms to the heavens and extend the middle digit of their hands in honor of Estelle the Mighty. And Estelle, the God-fearing religious woman that she was, had never made that gesture before in her life, but she truly felt that the good Lord would not hold this one time against her.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.